Hello, here we are once again with Mookie Tenembaum. We are exploring through these videos his disillusionism, his misalgic theory about human behavior. And as of late, what we are going to try to do in this video, this weekly recording, is to, of course, illustrate his concepts, his philosophy, but from a very practical point of view, trying to apply these philosophical ideas to everyday situations, to decisions we have to take, most of us at least, in daily life. And we are going to speak today from a disillusionist point of view about pets, about dogs in particular, about the relationship more and more human beings in our societies develop with animals, with domestic animals, with familiar animals, that in Mookie's terms, I guess the right thing to say would be that they become a part of the egosphere. They become a part of the very few emotionally charged individuals that surround us in everyday life. So it's about pets, about getting pets, about keeping pets that we are going to talk today.
Well, you know the word, the serious word about pet, it's called mascot. So you have a mascot. Yes. In Spanish, you use the same mascota. And you know, mascot means really amulet. Means something you have here to bring you luck. And that means that what you have has no physical purpose. Yes, you may have, let's say, something, a watch that you keep it in your arm so you can see the time. But clearly, the red ribbon you put so you will not have bad luck. It's not a physical thing. It's esoterical use. Yes, it has nothing to do with reality. The same thing with the mascot. The dog. And let's first go to the story, to the history. Dogs have 20,000 years. We may argue about how much, but they're about 20 years old. That's for an animal. It's very young, and that is because they used to be wolves. Now, what happened with the dog? How the dog appeared? Like any other wild animal that was domesticated, like every animal that was domesticated, the dog itself was useful. So the cow was domesticated to have meat or milk. Same with of course the goat, and then you have the chickens and the eggs. And I don't have to tell you all the animals that we keep for that. And the dogs, and the reason I'm talking about dogs is because they are the main pets. Okay, there are cats, of course, and there are people who have, the Romans used to have geese as animals that they used to advise them. They used to be like dogs. They will cry out when somebody came. So that was the reason geese were used. So the dog was a useful, and in fact, it was also raised for to be eaten. Yes, the same thing happens, still today in some of the places in Asia. It was food, but the dog, the idea of the dog as a guardian could have been replaced by an alarm, but a good alarm. Really, you don't need a dog, and to carry things like you have it in the Arctic still. The dogs, it would have gone the way the horse went. You don't need a horse. You have a truck now. You have a car. You have a motorcycle. You don't need a dog. But the dog survived that. Not only survived it in spades. Why? Because the dog became a pet. And the important thing is that it went from the outside into the house. That's the moment in which the dog stopped being a useful animal into something like in the family. Talking about Rome, in Rome, one of the ways to free a slave, of course, we're not talking about the same thing, was to make him eat at your table. Was by mensam. What's sort of freedom by mensam, by table. That means the same thing with the dog. Yes, the dog became part of you. You free him from being useful to use for something, and you brought him in. And the dog, on the other hand, of course, became more and more nice. How can I say endearable? What would you say? can you use the word endearable? Someone to endear it. He endeared himself to us by faces, by attitudes, by the way they behave, and the loyalty. The dog became, and why? Because this is Darwin, yes. The dogs that did not, the dogs that were ugly, the dogs that were not nice, the dog that didn't smile, the dogs become, they just disappeared. Now, I want to be very clear what is our position? What's the position of disillusionism towards any animal? Dogs, horses, ravens, or dolphins? They're computers. They are computers. They have no eye. There is no self-conscious. It is a computer. It is a totally predictable computer. It's a great computer. Some of them are beautiful computers. Others are, and here comes the moment in which I have to be very careful. Because some of the people who are watching these videos, of course, say they will take offense. What do you mean? The dog is part of my family. He loves me. You can see it. He doesn't need to do anything for me, and he still does it. You know, I feed him anyway. And the answer is yes and no. Of course, I understand that this is what happens to you, and disillusionism would say, if that is what happens to you, it's reality. But we still need to be not in the narrative that keeps you away from suffering, allowing you to sleepwalk during life. We need to have the facts, and the fact is that the dog is that. And but here there are many other questions that come before you decide to acquire. And I'm very careful with the word, a dog. Wait, I know some of them will say, "Oh, you cannot acquire a dog. You can only choose him from a place," for two reasons. One, because it's not to allow the economy, the economic part of it, and it looks like a slave that you buy. Yes, but you adopt him, you adopt a dog. It's totally different. So, but it's still an acquisition. Even when you adopt a child, you are acquiring him. Yes, there is an acquisition, not in the monetary point of view. What do you say about all this, Francis?
This is the part that interests me the most. It's the acquisition part of it, the moment when you don't yet have a pet and you somehow decide to get into that. But as you quoted the Romans and Latin, I was thinking, in fact, domus is how we say house in Latin. And to become domesticated, an animal that becomes domesticated is, as you said, quite literally, an animal that gets into the house, that gets incorporated into the household. And my main question from a misalgic point of view is, how does this happen? Because I can see the pros and cons quite easily, because it's expensive to have a new element in the household. It's quite expensive, not only in economical terms, I mean in all sort of ways, to have a new element in the egosphere. And from the relief side of the matter, from the positive side of the matter, I think it would be interesting sorry to understand what benefits can a human being find in having a pet. How does this balance itself with all the obvious costs of incorporating, of acquiring an animal?
Well, as you say, there are many things that you have to do when you're thinking about acquiring a dog. You have to first think that you will have to spend a lot of money or some money in its care, eventually in his vets, and even if you decide to bury him in a cemetery, in a pet cemetery. That this is something you have to take in account. Which, of course, people when they buy a dog is like any toy you buy, and I'll explain later about the toy, but now I want, like any toy, you have to know that there's certain cost for that. But the toy does not bark, does not bother the neighbors. Yes, a dog, you don't need to take it down to 3 times a night, and or in a cold night when it's raining and the dog has some digestive problems, and you have to run after that dog. You know, all that part that will interfere with your sleepwalking. It will make you sleepwalk in a different way. and you may have a difficulty in sleepwalking that way. A lot of dogs, we talk about now in the pandemic, a lot of people took dogs home because they felt lonely. This is one reason. And the other reason is because in many countries, the only way you could leave home without any limitations, what if you were walking a dog? So you walk the dog. I think the dog was walking you in that case. But you know that in England, they rented, they leased dogs for walks during the time of lockdown. Right? The dog became went back to being something. Yes, but then part of the people brought it into their egosphere because they have sentiments towards the dog. But remember, you can have sentiments towards the lighter. Okay, and if the lighter breaks or you lose the lighter, you will suffer. So it's not different from that. There is also, I was telling you about toys. Yes, the way we treat the dog is the way a little bit that we think of a toy. And the problem with the toy is that sometimes, as a child, you get that's it. Its life is less important. That's it. You don't want to have that I don't know, gun or something that you have as a toy. I don't remember toys I have, but your electric something, a train or something, and then you don't care anymore. But the dog, you cannot do that. This is, there is a gift that keeps giving. This is a gift that keeps asking. Give somebody a dog, and you are giving them a problem. And people will be very, oh, what a beautiful. Again, remember, you're choosing the puppy, which is the most beautiful one, of course. And that happens because this has been happening for the last 50,000 years. I'm sorry, for the last 200 years. People will keep looking and choosing the most beautiful dogs, and the ones that were uglier disappeared because of Darwin. And remember, this is a very enclosed Darwinism. There is no outside influence, like with the population of elks. Yes, maybe elks are ugly. Yes.
But it's interesting in itself how cuteness became an evolutionary advantage somehow. But I can see what you describe. Of course, in the early days, if you had to choose which of the puppies to feed and which of the puppies to keep warm, of course, you might go for the cutest one of them. And that's how selection probably started, to the point in which, as you say, we have breeds of dogs that are quite literally toys and nothing but toys. And there's no way of thinking about them. But from a childish point of view, there's nothing to be done with them. They just can be kept and cared for. It's almost as if you had a super teddy bear with you. But again, I keep thinking about ways in which this is a positive thing from a misalgic point of view. And I go back to, as you say, toys and games and entertainment as a whole. And I'm thinking if distraction plays a big part in this, if we keep pets in order to be entertained, in order to distract ourselves from other types of suffering, even if they bring along sufferings of their own.
Well, of course, if you have an assured, you have an insurance of love, the dog is going to love you, and you can even point to every face and everything the dog does that shows that it loves you. But when you're talking about entertainment yes, but here we're talking about, like we spoke in the other two videos. One we spoke about moving out, and the other one was about weddings. And in this case, we're talking about dogs. This is before you make a decision. One of the things you have to know is that this is not what you think is going to happen. You remember, it's very hard to foresee how you're going to sleepwalk. And the dog is going to be a problem, even if you can see itself throwing a ball. How many times can you throw a ball to a dog? 20. Then what you do? I mean, you cannot change the channel if it was a TV or an iPad. Yes.
That's funny. we're out of time. I think we have the basics of the decision making.
One more thing I want to be clear. The decision of getting a dog or a pet, it's very personal. This is not, we are not giving advice to do it or not to do it. I said those are the elements before you do it. This is the whole idea of this video. Just, I have to be more careful because we can get, some people
lots of trouble.
We don't want that.
Thank you very much. We'll carry on next time. See you.
If you enjoyed the video, please like it, comment and subscribe.